Over my years of ministry, I've been privileged to accompany a number of people in their last stages of their journey in this life, whether they are in the early stages of palliative care or the last stages in hospice care. But as we have journeyed together, at one point or another, I often ask them if they have any regrets in life, or if there are any unspoken words or gestures that need to be done before their earthly life comes to an end. And as they answer these questions, no one has ever told me that they regretted that they did not do more shopping in life, or more traveling in life, or that they didn't get that big promotion in work. But instead, oftentimes, I have heard how they regret that they didn't spend as much time with family or friends, that they really didn't take the opportunity to express their love and gratitude towards others, that they weren't as generous with their time, their talent, and their treasure as they could have been. And moments like this are a reminder to us to be able to live in the here and now, learning from the experiences of others, so that at the end of our own life journey, we don't have those same regrets or have missed the mark. Oftentimes, people's final testimony and wishes can be a great tribute not only to how it is that we are called to live, but what it is that we need to do to refocus or to readjust our lives. And certainly tonight, as we gather in the midst of our Easter joy, the gospel tonight, taken from St. John, the 13th chapter, in fact brings us back to the night of the Last Supper, the night before Jesus died. And in many ways, this 13th chapter of St. John's gospel has often been described as the last will and testimony of Jesus. Of all the discourses that Jesus has with his friends, the apostles, this is the longest and is in many ways the most precise of all of his discourses, where Jesus reminds his followers then, and still us today, what it is that it is imperative and essential if they are going to be his disciples. Jesus has already washed the feet of the apostles. He has already instituted the gift of the priesthood and the Eucharist. And now, in his final words to them, he reminds them that he is giving to them a new commandment, to love. But we may begin to ask ourselves, well, how is this really a new commandment of Jesus? Do we not see throughout all of the Old Testament, do we not see throughout all of the pages of the gospel that we have been called to be people of love? And that is certainly true. So what is new about this commandment? What is new about this commandment is that Jesus reminds the disciples then and us today that the type of love that we are called to live and to have is to be based on the love that Jesus has for us. Jesus says tonight, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. And so to be able to be a disciple of Jesus means that we not only have that love in our hearts, but a particular love that exemplified through the example of Jesus. Unfortunately, though, when we in our English language think of the word love, we experience a sense of poverty in the midst of it. We use this word love in so many different contexts. Think about it. In the same sentence, we can say, I love chocolate cake, I love the game of golf, and I love my spouse or my children. Hopefully, the type of love that we have for our spouse or our children is greater than our love for chocolate cake or the game of golf. And yet, in so many of the ancient languages, they had more than one word to be able to use for love. And in fact, in the Greek language, it was very common that there were 3 different words for the word love. There was that first word called eros, that was a passionate love for a person or a thing. It was an all-consuming love. There was a second type of love called filial love, which is the affection between friends. But when Jesus was using this word love and instituting this new commandment, he was not talking about this type of eros love. He was not talking about this philo love, but instead he was talking about agape love. And agape love is something that is much deeper. It is something that is much more spiritual. And how can we describe this agape love that Jesus is speaking about in the gospel? Perhaps St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the great theologians of the church, was best able to capture this notion of agape love when he defined love as willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. Willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. This was the type of love that Jesus lived during his earthly lifetime. And it is the type of love that he wanted his followers then and still us today to be able to live in our lives. That our ability to love someone else is not just a warm pitter-patter of the heart. It is not just something that we do and hope that that love will be returned to us. But real, authentic Christian love is willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. And certainly we see how Jesus lived this type of love in his life, especially as he laid down his life and was nailed to the cross. Jesus did not die for his sake, but he died for our sake and for the sake of all of the world, willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. And this is why this commandment is new. Love one another as I have loved you. And so we are called day in and day out with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, with the people that we recreate, and even with the strangers that we meet in the midst of life journey, to be able to live that type of agape love, willing the good of the other for the sake of the other. And certainly we have been hearing throughout our Easter season, in our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, how the early Christians took seriously this new commandment. When we look throughout the Acts of the Apostles, when we read even the secular history reports from that day and age, we see that one of the things that differentiated all of the Christians from all other people was the way that they loved one another. See how they love one another. This is why tonight in our first reading, why Paul and Barnabas would be willing to literally go to all of the ends of the earth, sacrificing whatever they had in order to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with others. They live that agape love. This is why Paul and Barnabas in our reading tonight would encourage the Christians that they would meet to be able to continue to accept suffering and persecution for the sake of the good news and encourage them on the journey so that they too could live that agape love. And so for the early Christian community, they took seriously this new commandment of Jesus. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. And if the early Christians were able to live that new commandment, if we are able to live that new commandment, then we hear Jesus' closing words. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciple, if you have love for one another. And so the defining characteristic for the disciple of Jesus is the quality of their love and the ability to will the good of the other for the sake of the other. That's why when the great theologian St. Augustine was asked, what is love? This is how he defined it. What does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten to the poor and needy. It has the eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear the sighs and the sorrows of men. This is what love looks like. St. Augustine, in his wisdom, recognized that real, authentic Christian love was lived in the concrete realities of one's daily life, and it involved the totality of a person. It involved their hands to be able to reach out to others. It involved their feet to go to seek those that were in need. It involved the eyes to see what was truly present. It involved the ears to hear what people were truly saying. And that if they were to live this love, then they would truly be the witnesses that Jesus invited the disciples long ago. And so too for us, this is the challenge and the invitation. If we want to be the disciples of Jesus in the here and now, then we must love with the totality of who we are and where we are. We too need to be able to use our hands to help those in our midst. We too need to use our feet to go out to those that are in need. We too need to use our eyes to see what is before us and not turn a blind eye. We too need to use our ears to hear the cries and the pleas that are there, and then to be able to roll up our sleeves and to make a difference in the lives of others. We certainly recognize that this type of love, this agape love, is not an easy love to live and to do. And that is why we come together tonight to be renewed and strengthened by Christ, now by his word, and in a few moments by his body and blood, so that we will then have the courage, we will have the wisdom, we will have the strength to be able to go out and to be his people of love. In the commentary this week in our Living with Christ missals, Anne Walsh, a great theologian, said these words: "In committing ourselves to love, we commit ourselves to a way of life that is not always easy, is often challenging, but has the potential to change the world. This is why Jesus gave the apostles then and us today this new commandment, to love one another as he has loved us, so that we can change the world and build it up more and more in the here and now to be the kingdom of God." And so as we go forth from Mass today, let us have our eyes open this week to those opportunities where we can live that agape love. Let us find ways that we can use our hands, our feet, our eyes, our ears to be able to reach out to those that are in need and to be able to share the love of God with them.